There's a quote I'll tell you that I heard that I thought was fascinating is investors tend to underestimate the durability of a super cycle because they're stuck in legacy systems. And when I think about that, I go, investors outside of California are pretty down on Los Angeles, in California in general, just because of various issues. But in reality, I think people are not taking into effect this permitting revolution that's happened, right? It's not as hard to build as it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago. And I think that part of it makes going from submittal to shovel in the ground to a certificate of occupancy much faster and more efficient.
Hello, everyone. Another episode of the Key to the City of Angels. I'm your host, Rick Albert. I'm super excited to talk about all things ADU with Babak Mortazavi. Got it. With LADU, LADU. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So why don't we start off with what you guys do and how you got into this space?
Yeah, first, great job pronouncing my name. You'd be surprised what variations I get on that. But yeah, so LADU is a project that I was approached. Some investor came to me, basically. They were like, hey, LA, we know your track record in LA. We thematically like this space and like all the cascade of legislation that was happening in the last 10 years. And they said, can you figure something out for us? So they were like, I was like, sure. And to give you some history, like previously, I've been in LA for 20 years. I moved in Los Angeles in 2003, opened up various businesses, a hotel in Santa Monica, for example. But no matter any success in the businesses that I was achieving, I could not save enough for a down payment as fast as asset prices kept going up. So it was like I wasn't in tech business. I wasn't a W-9 employee. I was self-employed. So as a self-employed person, it's much more difficult to sometimes get qualified, right? So it was like, man, there's a renter like hamster wheel that I'm on. It's like very frustrating. So what we did was like our previous startup, Up and Up, we started a company that was like fractional ownership for renters. So a renter can pick a home for sale. There was a rental price on it. The fund would buy it, and then they would share in the appreciation of the home. So that was great. It was like, okay, as you're renting, you're building some equity.
Like a rent to own.
It was like a modernized version of rent to own, okay. Right? And that's what we wanted to do because it was a pain point for myself. So as a result, we got to buy properties all over like Los Angeles. We really got to know the market. And as we got to know the markets in depth, I understood the development opportunity. And this was around 2018, 2019. And this was like a lot of still the city planning that was happening, like in South LA, for example, or LA City. They were now adopting these laws, adopting like the first version of it. I think you built your first ADU in 2018. You're probably pioneering the ADU market. So as we learned it, I was like, all right, this makes a lot of sense to actually, the properties we were buying for the tenants at the time, we understood the backstop of that was like, is there development potential if they don't buy the property, right? So we said, okay, let's just tell them. They were buying like a single family home in an R2. That's a 6,000 square feet, right, of land. So we understood, I was like, if they don't buy it, eventually those properties can be developed if these ADU laws take effect. So that's what happened. So people were reading my thesis that I was publishing. They understood my vision for Los Angeles. So they came to me, they go, hey, now this legislation is hitting. Can you spearhead this ADU business? And we want to back you. So I was very fortunate to have that start. So we did that. But another problem emerged, right, in the ADU space. As we started to look to buy an asset and develop it, I could not get an answer from like an architect. I couldn't get an answer from a contractor. I couldn't, and I understand real estate to a degree, right? So I was like, wait a minute, if I can't understand how much it's going to cost or get a straight answer from these vendors, how can a homeowner understand? And now homeowners, I always say the key to Los Angeles housing solving the crisis is not a public-private solution. It's really the current homeowners who are sitting on all this trapped equity. There's 1.5 trillion of home equity in Los Angeles. And I think the average home equity for single-family homeowners is like $500,000. That's an astonishing amount of equity
Yeah.
that's just trapped, right? What does that mean? What I'm saying is I think it's a high cost of failure for the homeowner. It's a one decision they're going to make. And if they can't get the proper information up front, how can they make it? A homeowner is not an architect, they're not a designer, they're not an expediter, they're not a contractor, right? So that whole experience was so painful for myself. I said, all right, why don't we become that go-to for homeowners? And that's how like LADU really started taking off. We anchored a lot towards education for the homeowner. We offer free site visits. So if you're interested in an ADU, subliminally, there's a lot of subliminal messages that are planted in the newspapers and stuff to build ADUs, the value of an ADU, for example, but no one tells you how to do it. So homeowners are aware of the value prop, but where do you start? So I think that's where we anchor too. So we decided to provide free site visits, right? So we subsidize it. Within 24 hours, you can have architect or one of our engineers on your property walk you through your options, get you a free site plan, show you your buildable area. And then these laws, as fast as they're changing, you built yours in 2018. Like I think from what was allowed in 2018 to what's allowed now is much different.
That's much easier.
Yeah, different and easier. And the densification. So a single family home can turn into 4 units now. So I think it's really just being on the forefront of education for homeowners. Everyone likes to make the building and safety department and the permitting department like a punching bag. Oh, my permits took too long. Oh, this experience was that. But in reality, I think the state has done a really great job of forwarding all this legislation that gets adopted every year to make it easier. And the building and safety people and the permitting department, imagine like this water flow of just sort of coming in. So I think they're doing a good job too, adapting to this demand. So just being that connective tissue is what LADU is, from design and permits to financing to the full stack of construction.
It's funny, when we bought our property, we were like the first in our little group to do the garage conversion, right? Mm-hmm. So like I had clients and friends who were like, it was already partially converted, whatever, but we're like, no, we're doing it from scratch. And I remember we're like, okay, sewer line, it just needs to go from the ADU to the house and they can share the line the rest of the way. Then like we close and the sewer comes in, okay, so we have to dig up the driveway and it has to have its own independent line. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh yeah, they just changed the rules. I'm like, mother trucker, it just doubled the cost of just the sewer line on how fast this stuff changes. So how do you keep up with all these laws? Because they are constantly evolving. I know there was a big group of changes, in 2023 or so? Correct me if I'm wrong. But like, how do you keep up with all this stuff?
We have a public policy in-house that we follow, and we try to stay a step ahead of it. You see a lot of it's foreshadowed. So we'll see like something pass in October before it gets adopted in January. Like one, for example, is AB 2533. It's probably one of our favorite ones. And that's the legalization of unpermitted units, right? Think about as many units were built illegally over the last 30 years. And all of those are now being incentivized to stop being shadow inventory, but being actual inventory that's permitted. That's one of our favorite ones to work on, because it's the homeowners they've already built it. Now they just want to legalize it and avoid any issues with like renters or insurance. Now the renters can claw back money they paid. We're seeing those cases play out, and we're trying to get ahead of that. 1123 is a big one. 1211 is another one. 1211, where you can now, for multifamily people, for investors who may be watching this podcast, you can match the number of units, right? So if you have a fourplex, you can add 4 ADUs, right? That's
no big deal.
Yeah. So that's a big one. 1033, I think if that one comes to fruition in Los Angeles, I know it's big in San Diego, where ADUs can be sold. Imagine like
about that.
A cascade of inventory that comes in that's like sub 300 or sub 400,000 in California. That's a good starter point entry for young families. So the legislative cascade has been phenomenal. And every year it's like it's moving so fast. They're doing like the VC model, move fast, break things. And as something breaks, is there a pain point, then they'll adopt like an addendum to that legislation to make it better. So I'm pretty impressed with the state of California in this regard and what they've done. And it's an exciting time to be in this business. There's a quote I'll tell you that I heard that I thought was fascinating, is investors tend to underestimate the durability of a super cycle because they're stuck in legacy systems. And when I think about that, I go, investors outside of California are pretty down on Los Angeles, in California in general, just because of various issues. But in reality, I think people are not taking into effect this permitting revolution that's happened, right? It's not as hard to build as it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago. And I think that part of it makes going from submittal to shovel in the ground to a certificate of occupancy much faster and more efficient.
Yeah, and to your point, I guess if everything's in-house, it's much easier. Because one of the challenges always with construction is it's easy. People like to blame other people. So it's like the contractor's like, no, it wasn't me, it was your architect. It wasn't the architect, it was the engineer. And everyone's like pointing fingers. I remember just because I had a separate company work on like the flooring in my place. And like they were fighting with my contractor and they're like, Rick, what do you want to do? So I just put them all in a group email. I'm like, I'm paying you guys to figure this out. You two figure it out. Within like 30 seconds, they figured it out. I'm just like children. I mean, it was just...
Dude, the finger pointing between the parties, that's another frustrating part. So that's why we decided let's just have a vertically integrated operation where we are control of the quality that we're providing these homeowners, and to mitigate any confusion, finger pointing. They always say if you're pointing one finger, you got three pointing back at you.
Right.
So we want to make sure there's no finger pointing. Everything is on us, so we control the quality, we control the output, and we hold ourselves accountable to that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, you guys are working on anything from a garage conversion, new construction, modular, right? So
yeah.
So what are some of the key garage conversion versus new construction? That's pretty straightforward. But what are some of the big differences between modular versus new construction?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. So modular construction, I think, is an evolution of technology being implemented in construction. Why do I say that? It's because modular housing was like a big hot word 5 years ago, 4 years ago. But what I saw was like, man, it wasn't really materializing as to all its big promises, right? So what was the problem? So it was big headlines, but empty promises, right? And the cost was not even comparable. So when we first started this, when we were pricing out projects, it was still stick built was still the best way to go. You can still customize it. You didn't have any issues, for example, like craning in your materials on a stick build, right? You got your crane in like a project. You didn't have to shut down the street from Public Works to have the oversized truck bringing a modular. And then I realized, like, in California, especially in Los Angeles, modular was really great in more wealthy neighborhoods, I would say. But in Los Angeles, where we're trying to work like in South LA or like the Valley or these other neighborhoods that really need more affordable housing, we realized that you can't compete with the local contractors. You can't compete with the abundance of a workforce that Los Angeles has. Because anybody and anyone can undercut you at any time. So modular doesn't make sense. But how can I help those guys make their work better? Mm-hmm. So with our modular product, it's a steel frame, it's panelized. We're actually replacing their materials. So they're coming to us now saying, here's a floor plan. This is what we want to be built. Can your factory build this? Deliver the materials, and then we'll assemble it on site. And
so for their bid sheet, it's more of they're just providing the labor because you're providing the materials.
They're providing the labor and the site prep, right? And so now, and then what we did was we took it a step further. We go, guys, you don't even need to like do your own floor plans anymore. Just here's a set of floor plans that now can fit, because I don't know, in Los Angeles, a lot of the houses that were built in the 40s and 50s, the lots are the same. Mm-hmm. 80% of the lots are 5,000 square feet. It has a 1,200, 800,000 square foot property in the front. So the site plan is really the same across the city, mm-hmm. right? Like I think we had, when we mapped it out, it was almost a million lots, right? That were very similar and had equity to build on. It's just a matter of contacting those homeowners. So these contractors now, instead of them bidding, they're just taking our floor plans. They're pitching that to the homeowners. Mm-hmm. This is the product that can now be sold. It's built. It's being built while the permitting's happening. Once the permit happens, the contractors are then responsible for the site prep. We deliver it, they assemble it. It becomes a much more faster and efficient process.
Now, because one of the concerns I always had with modular was when you're designing an ADU, one of the things that's often overlooked is privacy, especially if you're going to rent it out separately. So, like when we designed ours, we purposely did it to where the front had a front door with a window built in, and then the back side had two sets of French doors. There was no windows peering into the backyard of the main house. So it's as private as you can. I know when modular was starting to come out, when I was doing my very limited research, it was more here it is what it is. So how
Yeah.
do you navigate that if you're like, no, my lot's different. I don't want the main house being able to see in, vice versa, all that.
So it's customizable. We can still customize it the way because it's panelized. We can still customize any side of the property
Okay.
for the homeowner, right? So we can still put it in our system, make the modifications before we send it to the factory, and then they'll build it to that spec.
Got
So,
it.
and we see that a lot, whether it's the window size, privacy, or any other issues that they want to address. We'll do a little design session with them, and then we can make that modification in-house.
Got it. But then how does that affect the cost? So is modular from a materials perspective, because the labor might be similar, but like from a materials perspective, is it more expensive, but it's faster? Is it cheaper and faster? Like, how does that work versus starting living from scratch with a typical stick?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of the modular cost historically was the delivery and the site
That's a
prep,
good
right?
point.
It was never the cost of the modular product itself, and it still isn't. You would get a quote from a company, 200,000 for a modular product, and then once your estimate comes, you had another $200,000 of expenses because of delivery, crane, and then the site prep, right? So we took out those inefficiencies by dismantling it and assembling it on site. And as far as costs, it's still the same because we're giving the design before they build it. So they're able to build it according to the design the customer wants. And that's the beauty of it. And by panelizing it, which assembling it on site, that's what allows to keep the cost down.
Got it. So instead of bringing an entire right wall, it's more like bringing Lego pieces to put together, but you're able to lower the shipping costs because maybe you can go on the truck versus something else.
Exactly.
Like helicoptering it in.
Yeah, and then that was the biggest issue because we looked at a modular 3 years ago. It costs more to ship it than it does to actually build it. So we took those pain points and we said, what are the inefficiencies that we can solve in this process? And that's what.
Got it. So like, where are most of your clients? Are they buying to build for rentals? Are they buying to build for their mother-in-law? Like what are most of the customers using these ADUs for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Their clients are adding ADUs for a variety of use cases. It's
Sure.
either for self, for rental, or multi-generational families that we're seeing a lot. That's probably one of the. I would say it's evenly distributed across those three use cases. So I think that's unique. So if you're multi-generational family, they're more high touch in the design and the use case. Sometimes for older parents to move in or for their kids to move in.
Sure.
We see that a lot. Some people just want it for a rental income. They're more just, okay, just give us a nice product that we can rent out and add value to the property. The value prop is there. It's if you can build and add something at 300 a square foot and it's worth 600 a square foot when it's done and you can rent and get some income out of it, people see the value prop.
Oh yeah. No. To convert a garage now is what, like 150 grand-ish, somewhere in that range is what I'm hearing. But it's okay. But in some markets, you can rent that out for $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
You can't even find that. We were talking earlier about Alabama. Like you can't always even find that in Alabama. There's markets where you don't have that because you've already bought the land. That's really where the point is. It's like the land's already been purchased. You already own it. So most of the people that are doing these, because the challenge that I've been seeing on the resale side is appraisers aren't giving dollar for dollar value.
They're not. I'm seeing
not.
About 75%. What we tell it's about 75% of the main house on a per square foot basis.
Okay.
I think that's a conservative number to underwrite on as far as appraisals are concerned. And then income approach, whatever the rental comps are in the area.
Sure. Which is always why, like, especially here in LA, it always makes more mathematical sense to build in the luxury market, right? It's always more like you're almost like quote unquote better off building in Westwood versus like Pacoima. And it's not
Yeah.
because Westwood's UCLA, it's just the cost of the modular walls are the same, whether it's in Westwood versus Pacoima, but you're going to get more rent, the land's already been purchased, all of that.
Yeah, you're right. It's funny. I try to think about the rental market in a longer timeline, like maybe 10, 15 years. I don't know when you came to LA or when you were placing Tarzan. Like when I came to LA in 2003, like there was some markets that like you wouldn't even consider renting in. And then I saw the gentrification happen like rapidly. Then over time, like, oh, I would have never considered living in Culver City at the time in 2003.
Yeah.
I'm on the west side. Or Hollywood or the east side. And all these, you see all these enclaves that started becoming better and people moving in. And gentrification is always a kind of like, it's a polarizing word, right? But in reality, it's just like people are just going towards more affordable areas.
Right.
So when I look at LA, I say, where is the next affordable area? And it's like South LA is, I still think it's a diamond in the rough. It's amazing. It's in the center of the city. It's between the 4 freeways, right? Like, it's not like over the mountain in the valley somewhere. It's like right there in a central hub. And like that to me is like the ideal place that will get transformed.
Mm-hmm.
It was a socioeconomic desert, I think, for 40 years, right? But now it's like, okay, you got the stadium, you got these other things, but there's offices moving there now. And I think that part is, I build in Westwood. But let me tell you something. If you go to Baldwin Hills or Lamert or some of those other areas, View Park, Hyde Park, that's going to be the new Westwood in 2-3 years. And people, it's land, it's centralized to everything. Great for young families. So I think some of these areas, like that's LA's gentrification happened all around it. Now that's the last piece left.
No, it's funny. When it comes to real estate, a lot of it is common sense.
Yeah.
Because like to your point, I did the same thing when I bought my first 2 places. And even when we're living now, it's just, yeah, these other places are more desirable. Yes. But as they get priced out, they're all going to have to come to me.
Yeah. That's your philosophy. That's the philosophy that we're thinking about in this respect. Is like those homeowners, they don't want to leave. I mean, they're sitting on a lot of equity. They're aging in place. So now they're like, I'm retired, but I want some income. Okay, let me build an ADU for rent. Or they have a younger child that's now an adult that wants to come back to LA or stay with them. Okay, let me build my kid an ADU. And it preserves the character of the neighborhood, but also develops it, I think, at the same time.
It'd be interesting to see how many of these baby boomers go the reverse mortgage route and then use the money to build the ADU. So that it's like arguably free money. And they're like, I never have to pay this back until I drop dead. And I now have no mortgage, but I'm collecting $2-3 grand a month in income that I desperately need.
Yeah, we see that case. We see when we talk financing, there's an interesting product out there that we see people use. It's called like a home equity investment, right? It's like it's similar to reverse mortgage. They can take the money out without loans or interest for 10 or 30 years. And they can use, as long as they use that for an ADU to generate more income, it makes sense. So yeah, there's a lot of different products out there now. Even FHA has interesting products where they're financing. If you build an ADU, they'll finance it based on the future rental value. You don't need necessarily qualify in traditional measures. What's the rental value of it? And we will lend you that money to build an ADU if that rental market makes sense. So there's a lot of financing options out there that are created for ADU loans.
Yeah, that's how we built our ADU. We did the FHA 203K loan. So 3.5% down of the purchase price plus construction cost, and the rest of it was finance.
Yeah.
We ended up putting a little bit more money into it because we were the guinea pigs. We didn't know at the time exactly how much it would cost to build the ADU. So we were short a little bit, but it's like, look, it all worked out in the end. I remember it was like right after our wedding, I told my now wife, by the way, we're moving into the ADU. She thought we were moving into the main house. She's like, wait, what? I'm like, we're broke. So we're going to move into the ADU, rent out the main house, let us get all caught up.
Which way did the window face?
What's that?
Which way did the window face?
No, we did, because we designed the ADU with like privacy in mind. And honestly, it had its own little backyard. Because we all realize, okay, if if your garage is detached and in the back, just fence off the rest of it in the back. Now you have your own backyard.
Yep.
Right. And we lived there for 2 years through quarantine. We didn't kill each other. We didn't have kids at the time. So we did all right. We survived. But by being in the ADU, the big thing for me was we can still refinance. It's still considered owner occupied.
Yep.
And I remember when we did our second refinance, we timed it to our first payment wouldn't be for 2 months. So 2 months, no mortgage, but I collected 2 months worth of rent.
That helps out a lot.
It was like $6,000 we didn't have before. So
now I have a question for you. Now, if you designed your own ADU and you got to live in it, what was some design? How did you design it, and what were some design choices that maybe once you lived in it, you were like, maybe I would have done this differently?
That's a really good question. So we worked with our architect. She gave us 3 plans. And we knew privacy was really important. So the no windows peering into the air. But then one of the big things that we did that I think a lot of people missed the mark on is I matched fairly close the finishes of the ADU to the main house. And I did that intentionally because I wanted it to double as a guest house for resale. So same flooring, white cabinets, all that kind of stuff. In terms of doing things differently, let me think about that. That's a good question. We had a light. We ended up swapping that out for a ceiling fan because when it's a studio and you're cooking, the whole house smells.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. We had French doors, not really windows. So on one of them, we did have to add like retractable screens. So we did have to do that just so that way the place could air out. What else? Because to your point, by living there, we were able to make the changes that we wanted. So like we did all-in-one washer dryer hookups, which the units are fine. They're not great. So later on, we made ours all electric. So that way we didn't have to worry about splitting gas. So we saved money by not dealing with that. And it was already separately metered. But we ended up running the 220 conduit. So it was originally just a 110 for the all-in-one unit. So this way, later on, someone could put in the stackable 220 with the vent and all of that because it was ventless for that. I mean, I would say really making sure that it actually vents out was actually important because otherwise the bathroom just steamed up if you didn't turn the exhaust fan on.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of those little things that you don't really think about. Otherwise, it was a bitchin' little unit. To be fair, if we weren't planning on having kids, we probably would have stayed there longer.
Yeah. Nice cozy place with the kid.
It was cozy. It had its own yard. Remote work was starting to become more popular. But so I was still going to the office anyways. So the space didn't matter. If I didn't want people to come by, I didn't have to worry about it because we didn't have the space for them.
One thing is like even the smaller ADUs, it's I think hardscaping is a great complement to it because you use that natural outdoor space as an extension to the ADU.
Correct.
To make it more feel bigger windows if you can. So that's a lot of our clients with garage conversions, for example. Okay, let's also make the outdoor space just as like aesthetically pleasing. So it's an extension to the main house. So it doesn't feel like you're just in that ADU. So yeah, it's a lot of fascinating things. But I wonder like what the limitations were. Would you have gone 2 stories now back then that you can go now, for example? So a lot of people that built ADUs are frustrated, and from like 2018 to 2022, man, I would have built something bigger if I could have. A lot's changed. Gosh darn it.
It's a good point because we also keep in mind like the cost of building. So back then we paid like $75,000, I think, all in. And I knew developers that were doing it for 60, right? When they were flipping homes, converting the garages. Now it's 150. So for a lot of people, including my clients, I'm like, sometimes it's actually like cheaper to buy one that already exists. Because then you can finance it. Like I have one on the market right now with the 2-bedroom ADU. It's like appraisers, they don't really care if it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. They look at it like a pool, like it's just an added amenity. So they don't care if it's a big pool or a little pool. It's a pool. Pool's a pool. So it's almost like sometimes it makes more sense to buy that if it's already existing. Would I have gone bigger on that particular lot? No. Going up might have been interesting. but I would want to make sure that it looks the same as the front house. I think that's like really one of the biggest challenges I see with ADUs is people are designing these like my dream mid-century modern, but it's like, but the house is ranch.
Yep. A lot of neighborhoods.
I don't know if it bothers others, but it's to your point about keeping the character of a neighborhood. It's like, then let's keep the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think I'll give HPOZ credit for that one because sometimes
I agree.
some of those neighborhoods they're like, wait a minute, you got to match the pitch slope. No, if we see it from the street, it's got to be the same. So that makes a lot of sense. Continuity. I mean, it's basic architecture just to make it flow together. That's great. That's interesting. $75,000 though to build an ADU back then was pretty sweet.
Yeah, so we used the contractor for just about everything. We brought in our own painters, flooring, and kitchen. Is what we did because like you go to El Monte, right? There was El Monte, Anaheim. There's a few cities where they have just like rows and rows of these kitchen manufacturers. They're all the same. They all imported from China, but it's far less expensive than Lowe's, Home Depot, or even just doing custom. And it's like we were able to navigate some of that.
I have a question from your expertise in this standpoint. Like we always talk about the great side of ADUs, like how amazing they are. I do see some sentiment from like other people that it's, you're taking away my parking in the neighborhood. What are some like let's have an open come on. What are some negatives you think from your as an agent, real estate person? What's the negative of an ADU? Yeah, what are some parts that are maybe downside?
So I would say out of everything, I would say parking is probably the biggest one, especially now that they've got rid of the parking requirement. Because what I'm seeing in some neighborhoods where if you have 20 homes on a block and half of them have ADUs, where are they all going to park?
Yeah.
And it's creating congestion in those streets. And so for resale, people are like, I don't want to live on that street. They want nothing to do with it. So I would say parking is probably the biggest one in terms of pissing off neighbors.
Yep.
If you do build 2 stories, now that's towering over all the 1-story homes. That's not for everyone when it comes to privacy. As we talked about off the call, once you build an ADU, if the main house was built prior to 1978, that's now subject to rent control. And most people don't know that.
Yep. That's another thing.
So it throws a lot of homeowners in a loop when they rent out both, and then they find out that the main house is subject to rent control. And so they're like, wait, what do you mean I can't just kick them out or whatever? But even for the ADU now, we have the just cause ordinance. So that basically, and this is all for the city of LA, but that basically does a blanket, okay, they have to, if you're going to have them leave, you either have to pay them or if they like stop paying rent, the normal stuff. So I think if you're going to build it for the purpose of renting, the laws are super important, but from an aesthetics perspective, parking has become an issue. Sometimes building 2 stories where it's towering over all the single-story homes. Mm-hmm. But then to your point, if you're smart, you just factor it in. Yes, it's 2 stories, but it goes with the characters of the neighborhood. There aren't windows peering that in those directions, or maybe it's clerestory, right? The high windows, so you still get natural light.
Yeah, I
think you can navigate through it.
It's a fascinating thing. Like whenever you have change in a neighborhood, I know I see some homeowners are like, I don't want to live in a neighborhood with ADUs of them, or so it's. I just like that. This is the stuff that we hear, right? And I think it's fascinating. So even I wanted to maybe call it growing pains as you're going through this metamorphosis of like neighborhoods changing, but maybe for the greater good eventually. That's fascinating to know on all sides what the possibilities.
Yeah, and you brought it up. It's people are like, we need affordable housing. Okay, here's the solution. Oh, we don't like that solution. Hang on. Like, whoa, affects my neighborhood. It's like we're all gonna have to pitch in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're really going to do this, what is the best advice for someone who wants to be like, look, I want to learn more. I want to get started to see if it makes sense for me. What would be the first step in terms of if they really wanted to add an ADU to their property?
Yeah. So I want to say that it's a big decision. And I think we're cognizant of the fact it's a big decision for a homeowner. So there's a high cost of failure. So what does that mean? It's like you want full transparency. You want as much information as possible. And you want to understand the process. So learn as much as you can about what the process entails, and each neighborhood is different. If you're in Torrance, for example, man, you're going to have permit fees just like you're going to be shocked, right? So if you're in LA, you're going to have different. Each little municipality within the greater Los Angeles area has its own little quirks. So make sure you're knowledgeable about what can be built on your property, how it can be built, what the costs will be, the soft costs and the hard costs, and then what is the end goal in mind. And be pragmatic about that end goal. Am I building it to rent it out? Am I building it for my family? What's the use case? And does that investment justify that use case at the end? In most cases, it does. It's still good to understand what that process is. Sometimes we'll have clients that are shocked by the school fees, for example. That if you go above a certain square footage, you're going to be subject to the school fees. It's education. It's just learn. It's not a process that speeds up. It doesn't happen overnight. Designing your place. We'll go back and forth with homeowners, as many design sessions as they want to get the proper design down. Once the design is done, you submit it. Permitting can take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months. And then you have your construction timeline. So be patient. Take the time to learn. That's why one thing we anchor to is education. Free site visits. We'll have our engineer or architect come to your property, meet you in person, go over the options with you, and explain it in detail. We also compartmentalize it. By compartmentalizing, we say, okay, let's break it down. Let's do the design and permits first, right? That's one step. Once you have your design and permit done, then, we'll give you a bid to build it, but also go get 2, 3, 4 other bids. Meet different contractors, see their work. Having that permit, though, now gives you an actual scope of work to get hard numbers on. One of the most, I think, frustrating things between contractors and homeowners is the opaqueness of expectations. It's change order. This happened or that happened. It's like, oh, my budget is like planning a wedding. My budget's $50,000. I ended up spending $100. It's like, what? How that happens? So,
and you're stuck, right? Like, unfortunately, when it comes to construction, at some point you just have to throw money at it, and it sucks. But do you want the project done or not?
Nope. It's about managing expectations, understanding what you're getting into, be educated about the process, work with people who are transparent about expectations and results, and hold themselves accountable. We don't get paid until the permit's approved, for example, right? So we'll do the work up front, make sure the permit's approved. That way we're not just throwing money at it random design. Construction gets paid based on milestones. Work with people who are patient, who are willing to hold your hand and walk you through a decision that's a high cost of failure.
Nice. All right. I appreciate you coming on. How can people get a hold of you if they want to do the consultation, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just go to our website, LADU.co, LADU.co, schedule a free site visit at your leisure. One of our architects, engineers will stop by. We have plenty of content online, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok. We post podcasts, we post other content information, just PSA sometimes whenever a new law goes out. Familiarize yourself with as much information as possible, and I'm happy to work with anyone who's interested in building an ADU.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And for all those watching and listening, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you, Rick.
Want to keep unlocking the secrets to building real wealth in Los Angeles? Stick around for the next episode. Tap the video on screen to keep watching.